Oh no, no, I have zero attachment to it. It's cozy over here. Exactly.
But it's not really. Now it is.
Yeah, and when you start it up,
That's on.
And you're
That's what it's supposed to do.
Do you have any minutes by chance, President?
I think she does. Kurt's asking.
People have been asking you? People have been asking you?
No, usually I have a big old thing.
Oh, you don't have them.
And I have.
Okay.
I just hope I don't knock nobody out.
Okay, the meeting of the Rent Control Board is called back to order after closed session. Please join me in saluting our flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If anyone wishes to address the board tonight, either on a specific agenda item or public comment, please see the secretary to fill out a speaker slip. Would the general counsel please report on the closed session?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. The board recessed to closed session at 6:15 PM, adjourned closed session at 7:04 PM with no reportable action taken. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the minutes from the January 30th, 2025 meeting. Does anyone have a motion to approve the minutes? Commissioner Leslie?
I move that we accept the amendments.
Second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Leslie, seconded by Commissioner Ivanov. And may we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
and Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, next up, we have a report to the board from the executive director.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners, members of the public joining us this evening. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, there are opportunities for the community to get involved in the city's fiscal year 2025-2027 operating budget planning. Thoughts can be shared through an online survey available in both English and Spanish through February 19th. There is also going to be one more community meeting scheduled for February 18th at 6:30 PM at the Pico Branch Library Annex. Spanish interpretation will be available at the meeting. For more details and a link to the survey, visit the city's website at www.santamonica.gov/Santa-Monica-budget. I'd also like to congratulate Chair Gonska and Vice Chair Ivanov on their election, and I look forward to working with both of you in your new roles throughout this year. That concludes my comments, but I'd like to turn it over to our General Counsel for an update on 220 San Vicente Boulevard.
Thank you. I just wanted the board to know that we have been meeting regularly with the owner of 220 San Vicente, his project manager, and also with members of the city attorney's office to get project updates on the progress. They've been very cooperative with us, and we have really appreciated how diligently they have worked with us and with the tenants to make sure that the impacts to them during this construction project are as minimal as possible. We've learned that they are accommodating the tenants' request for alternate housing during the project, with one tenant being able to stay in the building during the project, and also that they're doing some upgrades to the units while the tenants are out of the units for this project. They've also hired a third-party asbestos monitor to make sure that the company that's doing the abatement of the asbestos is complying with all AQMD regulations, and we'll be getting regular reports about that. So I can continue to update you on the progress of the project as it continues until it's completed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that. I know that's a really big project that a lot of residents of the city are impacted by, that we've had quite a bit of communication about. So appreciate that update. And I think I know myself, I would like to continue to receive updates when it's appropriate. Commissioner Dudek, did you have anything? I saw your name in the queue here.
Oh,
That was just an accident. Okay.
yeah.
No worries. I have a couple of updates to share with the board and the public. First, on Tuesday night of this week, the city council voted to move forward with a citywide comprehensive rent registry. It's something the board, I know in this iteration and in previous iterations, has been interested in and has supported in the past. Also, part of that motion at the city council was for the city council's city manager and staff to consult with the rent control board on the development of that rent registry within the next 120 days. So I don't know what form that will take, but we'll look forward to hearing from our staff when those communications start. And also would like to, another topic that's come up a lot to me is algorithmic price fixing software that is being used around the country. There's been a lot of press and a lot of litigation around that software being used for landlords to set rental pricing. And so next agenda in March, I'm going to bring a discussion item to discuss that business here with the Rent Control Board. Okay. Next up, public comment. I have one speaker so far. If anyone else would like to.
Chair, Mr. Carrella spoke with our public information manager. He let us know he doesn't need to address the board anymore.
Okay, sounds good. So that was the only public speaker I had. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? If not, we'll move on to the jurisdictional items. Okay, item 10A1, we have an exemption at 1827 17th Street. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a property owned by Mr. Fernando and Sergio Cornejo. They inherited this 3-unit property from their parents, and Mr. Fernando Cornejo states that he's lived there his entire life. Mr. Sergio Cornejo moved back to the property back in December of 2009 after he separated from his wife. This property had been granted an owner occupancy exemption for their parents, and that exemption lapsed when they passed away. And so the brothers have applied for a brand new owner occupancy exemption. Mr. Sergio Cornejo has another property in Los Angeles at 60214 Flores Avenue, where his wife, from whom he's separated, resides. So he states that he does not live at that property. They submitted utility, financial, and government records to show that they have lived on the property for the requisite amount of time. They have the requisite percentage ownership, as well as the property meets the unit maximum requirements for the exemption. They are registered with the voter registrar for this property to vote at this property. One of the other units is rented, and the staff sent tenant response form to that tenant, and the tenant confirmed that Mr. Cornejo and his brother both reside on the property. And for those reasons, staff recommends the board grant the exemption and adopt the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Any commissioners have any questions about the staff report? Okay. Commissioner Ivanov?
Commissioners, items 10A1, 10A2, and 10A3 are essentially the same fact pattern. If nobody has any questions, I would move that we skip the next two staff reports and take one vote to grant all three of these exemptions, if there's any interest.
Do we have any speakers on any of these three exemptions? Okay. Then do we have a second on that motion? Oh, sorry, I missed that. Commissioner Leslie.
My question is this. They had one thing in question, whether or not they lived at the property as a principal residence since July 29th. I see that in the report, in the analysis. Why was that in question?
If I understand, that is the question that's before you, and so based on the evidence that's presented, staff believes that they have met that criteria, and that's why we're recommending that you grant the exemption.
Okay. But I was just questioning the terminology. They said the only thing remaining was in question was whether or not they resided there since July 29th.
Right, that's the only question that's before you, because there's three essential criteria. One is, do they meet the percentage ownership, which they do based on the title records, whether it's owned 3 or fewer units, which it does based on the records of the board. So the only question that they really had to prove to the board to be granted this exemption is whether they provided enough evidence to show that they've lived there since at least that date. And they have, and for those reasons, we recommend that you grant the exemption.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ambrose?
I'll second Vice Chair Ivanov's motion.
Okay, so motion by Commissioner, or Vice Chair Ivanov and seconded by Commissioner Ambrose. And can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Sorry. Yes, they're all completely similar, and they are within the guidelines, yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
and Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Could I just clarify, Commissioner Ivanov, was your motion just to consolidate, or was it to consolidate and also grant the exemptions?
It was to also adopt the findings of that conclusions of law and grant all 3 exemptions.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so item 10A4 is a new construction exemption for units 11 and 12 at 1217 9th Street. May we have a staff report, please?
Commissioners, the owner of this property, 9th Street Bungalow Homes LLC, bought it at on September 9th, 2020. The property already had 11 units on there. They constructed 2 brand-new units on the property, units 11 and 12, and they've applied to exempt them as new construction. Both of these units were granted their first certificate of occupancy this last year. They're not otherwise subject to the law as a result of the Ellis Act or a removal permit. And for those reasons, staff recommends that the board grant the exemption and adopt the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Okay, are there any questions from commissioners on the staff report? Commissioner Ambrose?
Yeah, I found this case pretty straightforward. Units 11 and 12 are obviously new units, which does not subject them to our rent control law. So I would make a motion to grant the exemption at 1217 9th Street for units 11 and 12.
Commissioner Dudek?
I second the motion.
Okay. The motion by Commissioner Ambrose and seconded by Commissioner Dudek. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes,
Commissioner Leslie,
Oh, you didn't receive it. You're abstaining. Okay. You could just say that.
I abstain.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
and Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries.
Okay, moving on to item 14, board discussion items. We have 14A is a discussion item from Commissioner Ambrose to request that the board consider making a recommendation to the city council to adopt an ordinance requiring landlords to inform prospective tenants if any amenity advertised or provided at the start of the lease term will be eliminated or significantly changed during the lease term due to planned construction or other activity initiated by the landlord. While we can't take any action on this motion, or on this discussion item tonight, we certainly can discuss it, and I'll turn it over to any speakers. We could start with Commissioner Embreeze.
Sure. So the reason why I brought this forward had to do with our one of our cases last meeting, where we saw a tenant who trying to remember the facts, who was renting a unit and then because of an ADU lost their parking and storage, and said that had they known that their parking and storage was going to be eliminated, they might not have rented that that particular unit. So the purpose of this would be to have landlords give disclosure to prospective tenants that one or more of their amenities may be eliminated once the landlord is aware that they will be doing construction. So I'm in this discussion just wondering, one, if another commissioner would be interested in joining an ad hoc, if that's something we'd be interested in doing, drafting a letter or advocating to our city council members, and if this is something that our general board is interested in advocating for.
Commissioner or Vice Chair Ivanov?
I just had a clarifying question. So this is, your proposal is it would be at the start of the lease term when a tenant signs the lease? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, correct. So it would be a disclosure that the landlord would need to provide to the tenant prior to them signing the lease. So it would be, like.
And this is if at the time of signature that the landlord is aware that there is going to be planned construction?
Right. So my idea is that landlords have to file with, I think, our building and safety when they pull papers that they're going to be doing. So at some point prior, right, they know when they're going to be building either an ADU or there's going to be some form of construction large enough, at which point at least some tenants usually get a notification that there's like noise or there's going to be some sort of construction that will be impacting them. So since the city already knows that there will be construction happening, I feel like that disclosure should be happening to prospective tenants before they sign their lease.
So that's what I just wanted to clarify, is this would be planned construction at the time of signature. So if 6 to 8 months after a tenant signs a lease, the landlord needs to do some sort of construction project that was not planned at the time of signature, this would not apply to that, correct? This is only at the time of signature.
Right, for the purposes of what I'm discussing. If a landlord 6 months later does do construction, whatever laws apply to disclosure notification are already in place.
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Leslie?
So please excuse me, I don't mean to be offensive. Kind of like a Prop 65 warning, like at the sign, like how they have the signs posted on the buildings and say Prop 65, this is cancer causing. Be forewarned that, hey, the ADU might be constructed here and you might not have a parking space. Is that correct in what I'm saying?
Yeah, sort of like a warning. I mean, when you go to fill out your lease, I mean, there's all sorts of other warnings that you're given, whether or not your building might have lead paint, whether or not it might have asbestos, whether I don't know. There's so many documents, maybe about like what to do if you have bed bugs, or there's lots and lots of forms. Maybe that's just specific to certain landlords or companies, but I thought there were all sorts of paperwork that was given before signing the lease. So yeah, sort of like a warning like that.
So, I have some ways that this might not, because somebody could put in there that, hey, we might prospectively have construction, we might have to take away the parking as just a way to jack up the amenities or itemize amenities as well. Prospectively.
That if they have to.
In other words, they could say, hey, we're going to, like, say, building says, okay, we're gonna have construction, we're gonna build ADUs, and they could pull the permit. But also, that's a way for them to pull out the parking and then charge for the parking, come back and charge for it.
So because they tell the tenant that that the parking will go away soon, they will then charge more for it?
If there's a way for them to say, okay, we're gonna have construction, I'm just saying food for thought. We have construction, and so tentatively you could lose this amenity. So they could pull it away and say, oh, we're gonna do construction.
Right.
And then come back later, pull the permit and come back later and say, hey, if you want it back, you can pay us $150 a month.
Right, but the point is that the prospective tenant would have the option of either signing the lease, knowing that their amenity might be taken away, or to not sign the lease and to look elsewhere because that amenity is uncertain.
Sure.
Yeah, I think this is a couple of meetings ago, we had a resident of 220 San Vicente who, I think it was during public comment, told us about the fact that they signed a lease. I forget exactly the timing, but essentially they signed a lease that they claimed they signed after the landlord had submitted for permits for construction, and that wasn't disclosed to that tenant. So that's something that came to mind for me when this discussion item came up, to prevent things like that from happening.
If Chair Gonska, if you think about it, over our 2-year tenure, we've had this repeatedly in front of us at this dais. As far as people losing their parking, we've had this several times over. Losing their parking due to ADU construction or other construction issues. I think there's a way to do this, but the devil's in the details.
Yeah, and perhaps, I think one of the things that was suggested was potentially a subcommittee to discuss, or.
Yeah, if we want to form a subcommittee and then also work closely with some of our council members. I know that Councilmember Raskin has already said that he would be happy to work with us if we were to decide to form an ad hoc and to go down that route.
Okay. Commissioner Dudek?
Yes, I think that we should have some parameters stated in here if we want if we expect I know this is for transparency, but it seems to me that having a permit on file or having a permit approved would kind of be necessary to, I believe, and that we might want to include something like that, to have some kind of concrete demand. Also, I was just wondering if the landlord said, I've got this, and maybe in 6 months or so, or 3 months or so, we're going to start building an ADU, and you would lose your parking. I wonder if there would be any provision to, at the time when this happens, just agree to give the person a rent decrease for that. I mean, person could petition for it, but I wonder if that would be anything we'd want to consider. Just a thought.
Thank you. Commissioner Embrees?
Just a response to that, I think what was interesting in the last case that we heard, or last month, was that in those circumstances, the person had contracted for their parking in a amount that was like $150 per month, so that we were able to just take away that $150 or make that stop occurring. Whereas usually parking is sort of built into the totality of the person's MAR. So when that amenity goes away, we're not just saying $100 off. There's a whole factor. So yeah, so hopefully by having disclosure, that we might still have people coming back and being upset about their amenity going away, but maybe there'll be less so if people are knowledgeable of whether or not they actually want to rent that unit.
Question for staff, if the board tonight was interested in forming a subcommittee, would we motion tonight to put that on the agenda for next meeting? Is that how it would properly work?
Yeah, that's right. You could say you're interested in doing that, and then we could take the formal action on it at the next meeting.
Okay. Commissioner Leslie?
If the board members recall, we've had a case where Chair Gonska he brought up whether, in the case, that whether to decrease the rent by the amount of a space that was rented by the tenant, or go by the base rate that we had at the time. This is what led to the revision of our pricing. Just food for thought as far as how we've moved forward. Because it's not just the standard, there are standards, but at the time, they weren't market rate at the time. So just food for thought. So he had the vision, and we could form the committee then to make sure that it was market rate and it was a fair return for the tenants.
Are you referring to the applications, the decreased petitions that were
Yes.
filed before the decreased standards changed? Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and as time goes on, that just won't be an issue because all the petitions that were filed prior will have been decided. But currently, there's definitely some of that gray area.
Yeah.
Commissioner Ambrose?
So is it my understanding we can't form the ad hoc tonight?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you can express interest. If there are some people who want to be on it, you can talk about that. And then at the next meeting, you can take formal action to officially form it.
So things like who would be on the committee, we can discuss tonight to make that a motion for next meeting. I was just trying to understand the process. I don't know if that's something you want to do, is to form the subcommittee, but if you are, feel free to make a motion. Commissioner Dudek?
I was just going to express interest in working on this if a committee is formed
Okay.
with Commissioner Ambrose.
Are there any other commissioners who are interested? Commissioner Leslie? Are you still in the queue?
Well, I'm just going to express interest, so anybody else that's also expressing interest?
Okay, and we can have two people on the committee. So we also don't have to decide this necessarily tonight. We can just motion to put the creation of a subcommittee on the agenda next month and decide in the meantime or at that meeting who's interested and then motion at that meeting. Okay, do we have a motion for? Make the motion, this to be to put on next month's agenda to form a subcommittee for this purpose.
Okay, well, I make a motion to make an ad hoc committee at the next regularly scheduled meeting in March, to make a ad hoc committee regarding item 14A.
And do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Ambrose and seconded by Commissioner Leslie. And we can do a voice vote, so all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? No, okay, the motion carries. Okay, and that concludes our agenda for tonight. So the next meeting is currently scheduled for March 13th. And can we have a motion to adjourn?
I so moved to make a motion to adjourn the meeting for tonight.
And do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, the meeting is adjourned.